And so, you know, say for example, you're just trying to start on your trading journey, right? And you know that the development process takes about 5 years, right? Well, that's kind of an overwhelming goal, right? 5 years out. So
In the beginning, yeah, of course.
yeah, so there's this idea that you need to have some type of strategy to break things down into manageable goals, right? Like smaller steps within that greater goal, right?
Yeah,
And I think to get there, you have to. One thing you can do is to make a process, right? And so 5 years out is very daunting. Um, it kind of ties in. Like I know I told you guys about how I wrote a book and I had to have processes around writing the book, and because if you just set the goal of like I'm going to write a book, um, it that's overwhelming, right? You have to break it down into something that is actionable. And of course, I did write that goal. I mean, I wrote down on a piece of paper like I was going to write a book, and every morning if I didn't feel like doing the work, I would look at it and I would look at that piece of paper I wrote, and it would remind me of the greater goal. But I also had processes in place that made it possible to do that, right? Like um, one thing that is really important in creating processes is creating a ritual. Like certain things you do, certain patterns of behavior. Um,
yeah.
so for me, I trade the New York session, right? So I have certain.
Yeah,
I'll.
kind of sorry to interrupt you, but I need to swap my batteries on the headphones. So yeah,
Oh, no worries.
if if I keep doing it, it's gonna take me at least 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I was just saying when you're trying to create a process, like for me, I start trading the New York session. So I'll wake up in the morning. It's right around the time I wake up, and I'll brew my pot of coffee. I'll do my my morning shower routine, uh, and then I have a very rigid process with which I engage in the market. Right, I'll look at the market and I mark the market off at midnight New York time the previous day, and really look at the hours leading up to the several hours leading up to the New York session, and I'll try to formulate a trade in that New York session based on only that day's the daily range, and try to compartmentalize that price in a way that like I can document the price movement, and sort of trade it in isolation from session to session. And that's like how you create like a daily ritual, right? And you're engaging with the market in the same pattern every day, but
Yeah,
it's
I mean that's what I do. I wake up in the morning, don't brush my teeth. First thing I do, go and get myself a glass of water, and then sit down, and meditate for half an hour to just get rid of any excess from dreamland or whatever it is. If I can just focus a little bit, then I go and look at the market, awaiting London Open, and then I'll be looking at the market for maybe 3 hours, and then that's it for the day.
All right, man.
yeah, and you journal that, but then when you get
That's
up is
about
you
not that yet. I'm
yeah
still learning the journaling.
you end up with a trading log, right? Documented things that you can improve on, right? Because going back to what we said, like a 5 year journey is just too grand to embark on without measurable steps or goals. So if you start journaling and logging your trades like that, then that gives you something you can measure, right? There's this mode of saying like you can't improve anything if you can't measure it. So you need to document your
Yeah,
trades, and it gives you something to build upon, right? It gives you a point to anchor your improvement upon. So you know, everyone, if you start out with the lofty goal of trading with a certain amount of returns, it's going to be unrealistic. You're not going to hit the mark. But what you can do is you can outperform yourself relative to where you were previously, if only
yeah,
marginally, right? So, and that kind of goes back to not comparing yourself to other people, right? It's easy to compare yourself to other people who only post their winning trades.
Yeah,
And
the race is always against yourself at the end of the day. So,
yeah, and I mean, if you're, if you're, say you're profitable at a, maybe your monthly statement is you're up 2% on your account, just hypothetically, right?
yeah,
And and that's typically what you get. Maybe if the next month you get 3%, you know, while that may not be a 3% objectively isn't a great goal monthly for somebody who's well developed, or not a huge thing to be, pop champagne over, but compared to your previous results, the 2%, that's a 50% increase, right?
it's an
And
improvement.
when you think of it as a 50% increase, that's huge and worth popping champagne over. So it's reframing it into that perspective that it gives you something to work with and build upon, right? In a way, it breaks things up into more manageable steps. And and then of course you can document that and you can log it, and then you can go back and you can, mark up your progress and your equity the same way you would mark up price, right? And you can go down to the drawdowns in your equity and see what was happening in the log, and sort of and it's very obvious in hindsight like what went wrong, right? It's not so obvious in the moment, but in hindsight it's very, very clear, especially if you document everything. um, and it helps you see it, right? Whereas if you didn't document it, might not see it um, in that way. But again, it's just, giving yourself something to build, and also making measured expectations about what the market is going to offer you, right? And for a lot of beginning traders, that just means just not losing money, right? Just breaking even, right? If you can do that in the beginning, that's amazing. That's something to be extremely proud of. And then of course,
Yeah, and but I think I got two type of journals. One of one of them, as you were saying, is about stats and whatnot. The other one is it is about my personal life essentially. And I found throughout the months that it is kind of useful to have it. Of course, in the secondary, if you want to call it that, I don't really write down stuff about the market or whatnot. I just write down stuff about myself. From the moment I wake up in the morning, this morning I woke up and I felt good. I felt full of energy, or maybe not. And at the end of the day, I was feeling kind of could be excited or disappointed, whatever. And I found throughout the months that even that type of journal kind of helped me because I could spot patterns in that as well. Maybe I was performing particularly well when I was in a period where, I was particularly happy or relaxed or, calm, whatever. And maybe I was able to find patterns of difficult periods as for my P&L, where on the other hand I was stressed out, nervous, angry for something, And I think that part of it is really important because when you measure yourself against the market, beyond all the pure numbers and stuff and stats and mathematical formulas, getting back to the psychological side of things, it could really help you to kind of, let's say, find yourself a sweet spot where you want to be engaged in the market. I don't know if it really makes sense, but for me it was quite a big part.
well, to use an analogy, right? Like it, it's an unreal. We would, if you were going to go into like bodybuilding and physical exercise, right? Like you to expect to like go into the gym and do your first workout. Maybe you've never lifted a weight in your life, and if you expect to like look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his peak after that first workout, I mean, of course, that would be an unreasonable expectation, right?
yeah,
That's a also a multi-year journey as well, right?
yeah,
The from I don't know what the phrase is, like Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It's the same.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
It's the same idea with trading. I mean, you know, but it's weird because people don't see it that way because they think there's like one secret cheat code that they can find that will bypass
Absolutely.
the
Yeah,
years of development.
that is bullshit.
Well,
So
of
that,
course, that's what people sell people, right? That's a very
yeah,
sellable
yeah, I
idea,
know that's what they believe. Yeah, of course.
and it's the same idea. Like, you know, I think it's a great analogy to like fitness and bodybuilding because that's something that takes time, right, and takes effort and work, right? And
Yeah,
but there's all these books and cheats and hacks around like fitness and weightlifting, and it's a great analogy because like in fitness and weightlifting, right, there's always these new secret ideas, right, that everybody's coming out with all the time, like how to, this breakthrough formula. And it's like
yeah,
the idea in fitness, the fitness problem is not a lack of knowledge, right? Everybody knows what they need to do. You eat uh, lean meats and vegetables and healthy fruits and vegetables and go fucking exercise your ass off. Like
yeah. But
it's
it is a it is a commitment. At the end
right,
of the day.
but it's not an information problem, right? It's a discipline problem.
No, it is a personal problem. And it is, the level at which you're willing to commit yourself. And I mean, I think fitness is a very good analogy because even in fitness, you don't see really a lot of people excelling at it. And I think it's the same in trading. You don't really see a lot of people excelling at it.
Yeah, and
It is kind of a very selective game, if you want, right?
yeah, and it's another ties in really well to the idea of habit reinforcement. So I've lifted weights for so long in my life that it's such a deeply ingrained habit in my life that like even if I try to stop, I can't stop, which is interesting because people have the opposite problem, right? Like people, no matter how hard they try, they can't get themselves to work out, right? But
Go on.
I have the opposite
But for
problem. I
you,
mean, yeah,
for you,
even
it is just a routine, if you want.
yeah, it's more than a routine. It's just like I can't not do it. Like even if
I mean, the problem is, do you feel, I mean, physically, or as a person or psychologically, do you feel better if you do it, right?
yeah, definitely. I mean, the
Yeah.
idea. I've had situations where I was kind of on the edge of injury, and mentally, I knew that I should probably take some time off and cool it. And like,
But you couldn't.
and it's a great example of yeah, I couldn't do it. It's a great example of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
separation between knowledge up in your head and some deeply ingrained habit that has
Yeah.
control over your life. You know, um,
Yeah. That is a very good example. Yeah.
and the idea is that the reason why trading takes so long is because you have to implement those habits and ingrain those habits, sort of like that, right? That didn't happen. It took me many years to build that habit of exercise. Um, and same thing
The,
is true with trading, right? It's not a mental thing. It takes time, but then eventually you get to the point where like if you have been abiding by a risk model for 5 years faithfully without bothering it, then after you get to a point in your development where the thought of violating your rules doesn't even occur to you.
well,
You know,
it just becomes a second nature of yourself. And I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, even just tiny details can make a lot of difference. Like for me, for example, it was, and I mean, I realized that for some people it could be just nonsense, okay? But even being up, I mean, waking up getting out of the bed like at 6 a.m. instead of 7. It made a huge difference in my training, um, because it is some sort of a chain of events, if you want to call it that. Because I realized if I was up earlier, I was able to do my stuff like breakfast and whatnot earlier, and I was able to be at the charts right in time for Frankfurt Open and London Open. And it sounds silly. I mean, I can give you that. It sounds silly, but psychologically, having that framework, that peace of mind of I've already done whatever I needed to do, and now I'm free. I can really focus on the shop because now it is 8 a.m. in the morning or 9 a.m. in the morning. It's in Frankfurt or London Open, and I can be focused on the chart. And all it took, it was just being up out of bed an hour earlier.